What's So I guess I mean when you were first getting started, then well, I guess we'll even take it back a little bit further than that. I mean, when you were a kid, what made you want to get into animation? Was there any particular character that you resonated with, or was it like a certain experience you remember?
Well, I always liked animation. I always liked the cartoons. I was born in 1952, so in 1957, that's when Hanna-Barbera started their own studio because they were, of course, working at MGM doing all those great Tom and Jerry's.
Right.
But when the motion picture cartoons ceased to be able to be made because nobody wanted to spend that much money on a cartoon that was only going to be a 10-minute thing before a regular movie, they realized they had to change and make things cheaper. And that's why they did the limited animation that they came up with. And of course, the Flintstones, proved that it didn't matter if it was unbelievably great animation as long as it was a good story.
Right.
And but as a kid, I grew up with all those. The very first Hanna Barbera cartoon, and most people don't even know that it existed. But the first TV cartoon was called Rough and Ready, and it was a little cat and a little dog, or a big dog and a little cat, and the dog sounded just like Huckleberry Hound because he had exactly the same voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Huckleberry Hound hit, I think they didn't release the Rough and Readies just because people would be confused because it was exactly the same voice. And Huck was so popular, they just kind of let Rough and Ready kind of go by the wayside.
Right.
But I grew up when it was like Beanie and Cecil. A lot of people don't even know who that is anymore. That was Bob Clampett, the creator of Bugs Bunny. He had a puppet show that he used to do in Los Angeles, and he made it into a cartoon series. And I was about 8 years old when that came out, and I loved it. But I never really wanted to get into animation because I wouldn't even know where to start to even try. What I liked was comic books,
Oh
and
yeah.
I was about 1960, 61 when Spider-Man came out. And a friend of mine and I were camping in the backyard. We set up the tent out in the backyard and we're watching or reading comic books by flashlight. And he pulls out this Spider-Man number 4, and my jaw just dropped. It was like, wow, I love this. So I traded him most of my comics for that one comic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of what got me interested in learning how to draw. So I would just take the comic and look at a good pose and then kind of draw it on my own. And that's what got me interested in drawing. And it wasn't until, fast forward 15 years, and I was working as a bus driver in Los Angeles. I was a transit bus driver. And my route used to take me right by Hanna-Barbera Studios every day. I'd go by there 5 or 6 times. And I always wanted to go in there just to tour the place because, of course, this was where all my cartoons that I grew up with, were made. And one day I was off and I sat down to eat lunch, and I had just gotten back from going out to check the mail, and it was just a bunch of junk mail that I usually just come in the door and throw it right in the trash. And for some reason this day, I put it on my kitchen table. So when I'm sitting there eating my sandwich, I see this little pamphlet, and it was a college extension course pamphlet that was talking about the different classes they were going to have in the local college for the summertime. And as I'm flipping through this book, not looking for anything, and all of a sudden I saw this comic book class. And we were going to make a comic book, and it was going to be taught by a guy named Don Rico, who used to draw Captain America back in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a fan, I just wanted to take the class to meet the teacher.
Right. Right.
And of course, I wanted to learn more about the comic book process too, because I didn't know much about it. So I joined up with the class, and after the first week, we brought in our portfolios, and my portfolio was all Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, all the superheroes. And after the class, he said, "Hey Tom, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I thought, man, how am I in trouble already? It's only the first day, and I'm getting talked to by the teacher. Well, he said, "I work at Hanna Barbera as a storyboard artist, and we're doing something called Challenge of the Super Friends, and we need people that can draw superheroes because we have a lot of people who can animate Scooby-Doo and Fred Flintstone, but they're not really good with their human figure." would I be interested if he recommended me in a class to a class that they teach at the studio every Thursday night? It's free, and you have to be recommended by someone at the studio. And I was like, my gosh, yes, of course, I would love to do that. And then so I took the class, and 3 weeks into it, I get hired out of the class. So I get hired at Hanna-Barbera, having never worked in animation. I wouldn't have even known how to apply for a job because I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
But they were willing to train me, on the fly as we're learning. So I just sat with an animator, and I was his assistant. And I happen to have here, because of my great uh, preparation,
Oh, wow.
that is the first drawing I ever did at Hanna-Barbera.
Wow. That is one.
I had them put it on a cell for me, and then they gave me a background. The background really doesn't go with this scene,
Right, right.
but it still worked. It's just out in the backyard jumping around.
Yeah, yeah. That is
But
one happy Fred Flintstone.
yeah, so he just inherited like $1 million or something, so he's all happy. But yeah, so I took my first drawing I ever did right down to ink and paint. I said, "Can you put this on a cell and paint it for me?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Because I'll keep this the rest of my life." And of course, here we are, 40 something years later.